Welcome to the Non-Obvious Diversity Summit. Now, today we're going to be talking about how food can put diversity on everyone's plate. Food has long been a gateway to exploring new experiences, to learning about other cultures, but how? And can it also create a more inclusive world? Hi, I'm Angela Chee. I'm host of the Power of the Only podcast, a media communication coach and speaker. And today we have some amazing guests to explore this topic of exploring how food can make us all a little more open-minded, and how do we bridge the gap between food and diversity? And what are leaders in the frontiers of food doing right now to make a difference? And how can you join in? Let's introduce our amazing panel today. Joining us today is Isabel Bradbury with the Pret Foundation. And we also have joining us today, thank you joining us, Isabel, Tracy Stuckrath, founder of Thrive Meetings and Events. And also Anupi Singla, founder of Indian as Apple Pie. It is amazing to be part of this conversation with all of you. And before we dive deeper into these topics, I really wanted to start by hearing some of the stories from you about how food can really be a connector. When I was asked to moderate this panel, I started flashing back to moments in my childhood and how food was really a bridge. When I was growing up, I was the only Chinese girl in my neighborhood, even though I grew up in Los Angeles. It wasn't that diverse. And growing up in the late 70s and 80s, it wasn't as diverse as it was now in terms of access to Asian food. So every weekend we would have to go to Chinatown about 40 minutes away to get all these supplies, and we would cook all weekend long. And for me, it was what food meant to me sometimes was actually made me different. And sometimes I actually hid from that because I wanted to be all American. But at times it was also a bridge. I really remember we would make these green onion pancakes called Bing, and my dad would spend all weekend rolling out the dough and putting all the ingredients in, and then he would pass them out to everyone in the neighborhood. And everyone would ask, what is this? And he started telling about the history of it and the culture, but he really just said, you can just call it Chinese pizza. So the neighbors really loved it, and friends would ask me, when's your dad going to make Chinese pizza again? So it's memories like these that really have us inject culture into food. So I wanted to start with you guys. What stories do you have about food and how it really brings back those memories and how it can really bring us together? Anupi, let's start with you. You're a cookbook author. You started Indian as Apple Pie. Tell me about, what does food mean to you?
Probably pretty similar. My stories are probably very similar to yours, Angela. I grew up outside of Philadelphia back in the 70s and 80s, and no one knew what Indian food was or what Indians were. And I always joke the most ethnic you got back then was Italian, because anybody that looked like me was just automatically Italian. They didn't understand India and Indian food. And
Wow.
so I kind of hid away from Indian food for some time because you want to be like everybody else. But my grandfather would visit and from India, and my father grew up actually in a very tiny village in India. We didn't even have a working toilet when we used to visit. Wow. And he would come and stay with us, and he would teach me my recipes that I grew up with. I always say that my mom tried to keep me out of the kitchen because she didn't want me to fall into those stereotypes that many women do in our culture. And so I learned how to cook from my grandfather. So when I think about Indian food, it's all about cooking from him, learning from him, and accepting my roots through his stories. And that's what I try to pass down to my two girls now.
I love that you're sharing your culture. It is an evolution, right? The journey of food seems so simple, but it's so integrated into our culture and our background. And thank you for sharing that story. As I said before, right, it was sometimes we avoided it because it made us different, but now it is really a bridge and an opening. And the abundance of food and the varieties of food now that we have is amazing. Now, Tracy, for you, what does food mean for you? I know it's your background in events, but you have a different perspective in terms of food can also be exclusive, right? If we're not careful. Tell me about what food means to you.
And, typically I just ordered off the standard catering menu. And then when I got diagnosed with a food allergy, it was really hard for me to eat off of that catering menu because nothing was labeled. And this was 17 years ago. And so what I've learned over the past 10 years with Thrive is that it is really unfortunately an opportunity to exclude, and one that we don't necessarily think that we are excluding people from. But when you sit down to a table to enjoy a meal with somebody, or with a group of people, and maybe you're vegan, or maybe you're gluten-free or kosher, and there's nothing there for you to eat, you are somewhat excluded from that conversation and that experience. And so what I'm doing with Thrive is really trying to embrace the inclusivity of it, and how not to leave anyone hungry or hangry at the table.
I love that. When I went to your website and I watched your video, I never really thought about it that way. I mean, all of us have certain dietary needs or preferences, but for some people, it's a matter of life or death, and to feel alienated at a so-called inclusive event. So I appreciate you sharing your story, and I can't wait to dive in more. Thank you.
Thanks.
Now, Isabel, let me hear about your story with food. You are not just working with the Prep Foundation, but your mission is about creating avoiding food poverty, right? And having more sustainable ways. Tell me about your connection with food.
Well, I'll start with a personal story. I think food is a connection with people and places. When I was 7, I actually moved to India with my family, and I remember that's when I think the importance of food started for me, especially related to the access of food, but also the importance of food in sharing culture, being connected to other people's culture and also your own. I remember joining our new school and sitting down and actually sharing food around a table and being pointed in the direction of what they called the international food, which was pasta and just your standard menu, and then eventually trying beautiful curries. And from then on, my love of paneer has just grown. So I think food is a brilliant way when you're away from home to connect with new places and new people.
I love that. I think all of us have a special connection with food. Besides that, it tastes good and we love it. And as you evolve, you travel or you get more experiences, it's always amazing to experience different experiences. So let's open it up. And how do you guys think food can really help us be more open-minded? What role does it play?
I mean, from the perspective of, hosting an event or hosting, dinner at your house, it like the two of you, Anupe and Angela, you mentioned how it brought people in your community together by sharing what you knew of your culture and what you learned. And I think that's the other way that we can bridge gaps is like, whether you're from, East LA or, Britain or Japan, sharing what you bring to the table, literally, from your food culture, that helps educate people on where you came from, but how also that you eat, and also what you might not be able to eat because of a religious-based practice or for a medical reason.
Yeah. What are some of Tracy, just elaborate on that. At the events, what are you providing for people that when they think about, just to get a different perspective, because people don't think about that. I know when you sit down at a table and you look at the menu, you're not thinking of vegetarian. They're always the one that's kind of gets their food second, right? Or they're kind of waiting. Like, how can people, when they know that people have different tastes, kind of make it more inclusive?
Well, looking at the history of your event, so if you've had people that have requested specific dietary needs in the past, looking at what you've had to serve, or what you have had served, and what people didn't eat, so you can actually design your menus around some of those different dietary needs. And one method right now is veg forward, and thinking about starting with a vegan-based meal and then adding the accompaniments on it that are, animal-based proteins and things like that, so that you're starting with a base menu that actually everyone can eat for the most part, minus some allergies or so, and then building onto that. So, but you can still add the flavor profiles into it with spices and different aromas, but thinking at it from looking at everybody across the board and then adding to it.
Great. I appreciate that. Isabel, you talk about Tell me about what you're doing with the Prep Foundation. I found it fascinating, and how you're contributing to helping everyone get access to food.
Yeah, so in the Prep Foundation, I'm really involved in our food donations program. We've been donating food since Prep first opened the doors of its shops, and it's a program that's grown, and we're now donating over 6 million items across the country and across the globe from all of our shops. We donate in various different ways. It depends on what's appropriate for that shop, that charity, and we mainly support charities that are addressing issues linked to homelessness, hunger, and poverty. Since then, the program started with food, and I think it's a really great example of how charitable efforts and the diversity conversation can start with food. And since then, we've grown in scale, and we've developed more programs. So we now have a financial grants program as well as a food donations program, and then an employment program and a housing program. And it's just recognition that you can't solve poverty or inequality with just food. You have to go beyond that. But it's a brilliant starting point.
I love hearing how it evolved, and the fact that you are able to take the food that you're not using every day and repurpose that. Is that a difficult process? Because I often go to supermarkets, or I just see so much food waste, and it really hurts my heart to see that, nobody should be out there lacking food. We have an abundance of food. How is that process, and how can other people take that on?
I think perhaps in the past it used to be difficult, but at the moment now we have so much brilliant technology that's helping people to redistribute food. We work with a number of really innovative startups that are helping people to access free food, such as Olio or Neighbourly. And then there are other startups that are looking more on the food waste side of things, such as Too Good To Go and Karma, all to do with redistributing food. So people can help. You can download these apps and access free food, help people in your community to do the same. It's getting easier and easier. But I would say there is a considerable investment for companies to do this in terms of both time and money, but it's well worth it, the benefits that it brings.
It's nice to see that it is evolving and there are options, because I do see a lot of food waste. So thank you for being a part of that process and helping people with that. Anupi, tell me a little bit more about how you think that food can bring more diversity to the table, and what are the things that you see or you're involved with?
Sure. So I write cookbooks, but I also have a line of ingredients, Indian ingredients, that are in over 30 locations, grocery stores in and around Chicago, Minnesota, Kansas City, Missouri. And I gotta say, I really want to recognize the fact that when I go out and I do my demos, and I do my demos myself because I really want to engage with folks that are purchasing my product. And also, I teach a lot of classes at libraries. I think libraries are an amazing gauge on what day-to-day people are actually thinking about food and how they're engaging with your food. And I want to say first, and I don't think we do this enough these days, how far we've come in the last 25 years in America in terms of inclusion, in terms of diversity. We always talk about where we have to go, but I think we need to recognize how far we've come, because the day-to-day person is incredibly open to new ideas, new tastes, new recipes. But the thing is, you have to, I think, take the pressure off. Like, I'll use Isabel as a great example. Isabel, I would have never known that you had lived in India just by possibly meeting you, but by speaking with you and hearing your story and I always say, take the edge off, because we grew up edgy. I feel like I grew up super edgy, like, oh my gosh, I don't know, if I'm going to say the right thing, da da da. I always tell my kids, it's so easy for the bullied to become the bully. Like, we never want to get to a spot where we become so tight with our information that we just hold our arms up and not listen to where people are and engage them to get to that next level. So in all of my library events, they're sold out. I'm talking about small towns in and around Chicago, 100, 150 people, waiting list, with people that would have never thought to eat Indian before, because I don't just say it's Indian, I say it is something you can incorporate in Meatless Monday. You could, if you're vegetarian, vegan, if you have someone who's gluten-free in your house, there's different approaches to it. So I always try to make people feel the way that I'd hoped people would have made me feel. And it's encouraging because there's so much reception for that alone, is just to take that edge off for people.
I love that you said that. I mean, we really have evolved coming from an Asian background, like I said, right? Because we hit it. And now, my kids' lunch meals, they have, chicken tikka masala, they have sushi rolls, they have, I had like chicken fried steak and a mashed potato lump and, pasta. That was basically their hamburgers and pizza. And they still have those. They love that. But I think, our world is evolving and people are open. And I love the optimistic view that you have, is that we need to be more open to the different things that we know. And like you said, Isabel, you know probably a lot about Indian food, but it may not seem like that on the exterior, but you just don't know what people can share. And all of us should add value by sharing what we know, whether it's about different cultures of food or just different types of food, and being like vegan or gluten-free. There's so many things to share. Let me just open up to the group and let's get a little deeper, because it is evolving and we're so optimistic. But yes, in the past year, there's been some intense moments. How do you think food can play a role in combating some of maybe the xenophobia that's happening around the world? How can we use that as a bridge?
And I think this panel is a great start. I think it starts with conversation. I also think that for me in my classes, I always approach it where no question, unless the source feels uncomfortable, is unacceptable. I really open it up. There's no dumb questions, because honestly, I always say I've never had meatloaf. So we'll start there. I don't want to assume anything. And I'm open to the idea of learning how to make what you make and what you love, as long as you're open to what I do. And I think once you take that pressure off, it truly, truly opens the doors. Like, people love to share. I don't think just because you're Asian or from Africa or whatever, that's the sexiest food out there. I mean, if you're making a pierogi, I want to learn how to make that too. I just want to learn how to make everything. And I think that's what we have to push out there. But then also the authenticity of recipes is very important to me. So I think it's important to be open to understanding also how to do it traditionally before you jump into someone else's culture or someone else's cuisine.
Well, and I want to say, on that same concept is that, lunch and if you work in a corporation, lunch and learns are a great opportunity to bring that information in. So you can say, hey, I'm vegan. Did you know that vegans don't eat this or this or this? And instead of cow's milk, I use oat milk, or I use soy milk, and this is how I incorporate it. So, because there's a lot of people out there that don't understand that these other milks work for other things besides just your cereal bowl. So, and even like aquafaba, which is the liquid from a chickpea can. Yeah. Who knew, right? But that can be used to make meringues and replace eggs in different dishes. And so I think, with the onset of, COVID has brought us all onto our computer screens, and there's lots of cooking demos. So use the opportunity to show somebody, to have lunch in their kitchen with them as a lunch and learn. And hey, let's make this vegan dish for the day, or let's make this gluten-free dish, or here's my favorite gluten-free products that I use on a daily basis that you might not know. So not just sharing the recipes, but sharing, hey, this is how I live my life and why, because a lot of people keep their dietary need hidden, and we don't want that to be hidden. We want to make it well aware. So one, we don't get sick, but also so that we can be inclusive in that food and beverage event.
I love that insight, because it's not just about different ethnic foods, it's different types of food, but everyone loves, it's a great conversation starter, right? When we talk about the theme of this, how can food put diversity on everyone's table? It's a way for all of us to share parts of ourselves and also learn. Isabel, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just sticking with the lunch and learn topic, we had a brilliant lunch and learn at work. We took part in a workshop run by a charity called My Grateful, and what they do is they offer jobs to migrants who might not have access to formal employment because of linguistic or legal barriers, and their job is as a chef to share their culture and their cuisine with a group of individuals, friends, colleagues, whoever wants to take part. And we had a brilliant chef from China called Denise, and she taught us how to make dumplings. And related to Tracy's comment, I'd just like to say that a couple of us in our group have dietary requirements, and we were able to pick a menu that fit with everyone so that we could all get involved in the cooking class and learn from culture, as well as learning from each other. The organisation was called My Grateful. It's a UK-based charity.
That sounds amazing. And I love that you were making dumplings. That's one of the other things we made when I was little. People don't, I think it's actually going back that way, though. People making real food. Now everything's so packaged, right? You can just buy dumplings and pot stickers in bulk. Who has time to make them? So I remember every weekend, my parents, we would make those, and we don't make them anymore. But we're starting to bring it back. How do you feel like maybe food habits have changed during the pandemic? I feel like people are cooking more. Maybe, I started baking breads and making more of those dumplings, like going back to maybe away from that fast food convenience thing and really starting to appreciate food again. Do you guys agree, or what trends do you see?
I do. I totally agree with that. I mean, everybody's been making bread, but I also think that the focus on getting your food from the local farmer has really skyrocketed. So people are really getting to know ordering food directly from the farmer and making that food from scratch. So you see a lot more people doing that. So it's learning the vegetables that are in season in their towns, as well as the different grains they can potentially get from a local farmer. I think that has really helped, been helpful during the pandemic, and it focuses on what is natural and local and close to them, instead of just getting something from the package from the store. And my farmer friends, their sales have skyrocketed.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, and supporting your local communities. I've always ordered local boxes, and I kind of stepped away from it for a while because sometimes I wasn't using all the different things. And definitely during the pandemic, I started looking at local farmers and getting those boxes again, cooking a lot more, cleaning through my spice cabinet and reinvigorating things. So that was really, really special. Anupi, what have you seen? Did you change anything up or add more recipes or do anything different during this pandemic to support people?
Yeah, so I started doing my cooking classes because obviously I could not go into the classroom. I started doing them on Facebook and on Instagram Live. And they were so successful that I had to pull back a little bit because I wasn't getting any work done. So, because they were so much fun. But it was wonderful to really connect with people. And I still do once or twice a week these classes, but a little bit more organized. But the response has been phenomenal because people have a little bit more time. It's the one time when we know just about what everybody else is doing in the world. They're at home and we are all kind of cooking together and learning from one another. And the other aspect that I really enjoyed was, just for myself being a small business, is how so many of the folks that I spoke to really just showed me their appreciation by going out and purchasing my products wherever they could, and also bringing in some of my spices and understanding why it is key to, I think, purchase product from somebody who is from that culture oftentimes and really understands the culture. That's why I offered up spices that were Indian, because much of the Indian spices out there are not even Indian, and they're not even something that we would use in our community. And so once you educate the public to what is a single source roasted and then ground spice, and why do you use that spice in different ways, just the folks out there, they had a little more time to absorb that education, and people love to be educated. And once they are, I mean, the sky's the limit, really, in terms of offering folks cookbooks, recipes that work, as well as products. It's been a really interesting period, and just a fun period for me as somebody who just loves to cook and share.
I love that people were so engaged. All of us were looking for new ways, even right, gardening and learning those spices. What were some of those spices? I actually have a lot of different spices that are kind of pre-made, right? Not pre-made, but they like vindaloo. It's already pre-packaged. Like, what are some of those single source spices that you're talking about?
Sure. I mean, the first thing that you want to remember is that in Indian food, if you buy any spice that's actually called curry, you're really not buying something that we as Indians cook with. So there's really no spice unless we're doing a derivation of something that's more, British Indian. So we use garam masala is our main North Indian spice blend. Sambar powder is a South Indian spice blend. We've got chana masala. So if you eat chickpeas, that chickpea curry, why is it so delicious? Well, because it has some pomegranate seeds in there, some tartness from black salt, as well as some dried mango powder. And the other part of it that's so critical and it's really important to me is a lot of these spice companies out there aren't like, they're not, and now I sound like an infomercial, I don't mean to, but they're not roasting their spices first. That's a critical, important part of Indian spice blends. So when you get out there and you purchase your blend, just turn it around and see, how is it made and what's the source? And is there any kind of like food dyes in there? You don't want any of that stuff. We don't cook with that. And so that is a way to understand what's a little bit more authentic, if that's important to you. And for some folks, not so much, and that's fine too.
Yeah. And I love that it's a story behind it too. I mean, not just about Indian food, but for those of you listening, it's like every food, it starts from a story, right? You can go back and you can learn so much as a gateway to really start a conversation of how is this spice made? What region is this food from? What does that mean? I love exploring when you look at a dish and you go, why does this have tomato in it? If it's an Italian dish or a Chinese dish, why is there a fusion with this culture? And it actually tells a lot about history too. So diving deeper into those stories. So thank you for sharing the stories and the education behind the food to really get people involved and really have that conversation besides having fun cooking. Isabel, how do you feel like food habits have changed during the pandemic? What have you seen in terms of obviously providing food for people, but what are some insights you want to share?
I guess just to echo what's been said, it's brilliant how people have turned to technology and Instagram and TikTok and all of these wonderful social media outlets to share food rather than sharing in person, which is obviously something that we're missing. From the food poverty side of things, I think the pandemic, unfortunately, has thrown a lot of people into food insecurity and food poverty. But at the same time, it's thrown that issue up into the public sphere, and people are campaigning against child food poverty, especially here in the UK. A brilliant campaign has started with a footballer named Marcus Rashford backing the campaign and asking our government to step up and do more to help children who are suffering from food poverty. And I just think people have realised the vulnerability of life and how something can just turn in a second. And really, food poverty is such an emotive issue, and the pandemic has exposed that.
Yeah, well, thank you for your work and helping to create more sustainable processes and really help people with food poverty. I know it's just one piece, but it does start with companies taking action and individuals taking action and figuring out what they can do. And we're going to talk more about that, how we can all be involved. But I really just want to open up the conversation of how much creativity is in this room right here of like diverse aspects. We talked about how food can put diversity on everyone's table, but we're not just talking about diversity in terms of ethnic, but in terms of also dietary needs and also providing for people. Let's start talking about some ways that people can really take action individually, not just from a company perspective. I know that you've shared a little bit about that already, but let's just share some insights. What maybe two top things that you think people can do immediately to really make an impact? Tracy, let's start with you.
So if you're going to host an event, the first thing that you should do is definitely ask your attendees and your guests, do you have any dietary needs that I can provide for during this food and beverage function? That's first and foremost. One of the other aspects of dietary needs that I didn't mention earlier too is accessibility of those individuals that may have use mobility devices or are visually impaired. That's another issue of accessibility. So looking at where the accessibility of getting to that food and beverage as well. So looking at Isabel's side of things as well is, can I get to the space where the food and beverage is being served? So looking at it from not only what's on the plate, but how do I get to the plate? And I think just looking at those two aspects of food is important.
Thank you, Tracy. Anupi, do you want to share?
Sure. I always say in my classes, use your spices, don't worship them. So don't buy them and stick them in your cabinet. I've been known to do this as well because they look so pretty in their jars. Pull them out. So whatever's in the back of your cabinet, pull it out, open that lid up, and maybe just take a vegetable and throw it into your oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Different if you're obviously in Europe, but for about 40 minutes, maybe like a butternut squash, and sprinkle it with those spices. So use your spices. And then also, don't be afraid to just go out there and ask people about what they're eating. Do something. I know during the pandemic it's tougher, but I always encourage folks, go to an ethnic grocery store. That's one of the best ways I've found to really connect with people that are in the community, and feel comfortable to ask questions. There's a really fun Chinese grocery store where my husband grew up in Downers Grove, right outside of Chicago, and they don't speak English, but I went in and I just asked for a few ingredients, and she loved the fact that I speak Japanese. I don't speak Mandarin. My kids speak Mandarin. So it just facilitated all of these really interesting conversations because I took that initial step to walk in, ask a question, and just kind of, I always say, take that pressure off them and take the pressure off yourself. Just ask and make sure it comes from a great place, and I'm sure they'll be receptive to it.
I love that you said that, because sometimes, in certain areas, we have a street in San Diego that's all Asian markets, but even there's the Korean market and the Chinese market and the Indian market and the Japanese, they're all different, right? And it can be kind of alienating for some people. They're like, oh, I don't want to go in there. But once you go in, it's almost like a fun exploration that you can go in and really dive in and learn a little bit more about the food. So I appreciate you saying that. It's so fun to go to the different markets. And Isabel, what do you want to share?
I would say that there are just little changes you can make in your own life, whether that's reducing food waste on your plate. Most of the food waste in the UK comes from the home. And so there are little things that you can do, having a box in your fridge that says use me first, or ensuring that you use the right bananas in banana bread to reduce food waste, or just signing your name on a campaign. There are so many brilliant campaigns at the moment on, food poverty, food sustainability, and also accessibility. So probably those two things.
Yeah. How can people get involved if they see a place or a business that they feel like, oh, there's a lot of waste, or, often I go into places and I was like, oh, are they doing anything? How can people, what's an approachable way to go to a business or try to figure out what they can do personally?
I think we always have a lot of questions from customers asking, what are you doing? And luckily, we have the answer that we're doing quite a lot. But there are easy ways, as I say, with these apps now, that businesses can get involved. There's one of our partners is called Olio, and they're international now, I think. And they essentially organise for a volunteer to arrive at that store, collect all of the surplus food, and then take it home, and then they share within the community. So it's doorstep collections. And the brilliant thing about Olio is they're free to use and free to access, but there's no means testing. So it's not as if it's a food bank, which means that if you're struggling, or if you're not, you can access the food. And so it's a pretty stigma-free way for people to get free food at a time where they might not feel they want to access a food bank, but they would really benefit from having a couple free sandwiches.
I love that technology is bringing people together as well. And it's really hopeful that we can start creating and these new innovative ideas. I think we're in this time where, this past year, we've seen a lot of hardship, a lot of different things. For some of it's a pause, for some of it's been really challenging, but I love seeing these new ideas and people being more open-minded to new things that we can all create together. So thank you for sharing your insights on the specific things that each of us can do. Now I want to close off with a little bit more hope. What do you see for the future of how food can really bring us together. What are some of your visions for what you see for the future, Tracy?
I think people are going to be a lot more open to trying new things, as we've been talking about today. But one of the things that veganism is really, or whole food plant-based eating is really growing. And I think that is a good context for looking at what's healthy for us, but what's also healthy for the planet, as well as reducing food waste in a variety of ways. So I think that's a very big positive that we have going forward. But I do think that trying new foods is something that we're all keen on now when we're looking online and seeing all these classes that are available, and it's letting you do it in your own home. So I think that's a good, positive, inclusive experience that people can have.
Amazing. Anupi, what's your vision for the future in terms of food creating a bridge for all of us?
Absolutely. I think that everyone being at home and just cooking at home has meant that so many folks that didn't think they could do it, didn't think they could tackle it, didn't think they could make a dish, thought it was out of reach, now are realizing they actually can. And what I really hope, and this is the reason why I am writing cookbooks now, I used to be a reporter in Chicago, is because my kids, and if we don't create the food legacy for our kids, who is going to do it for them? And so I'm finding that more parents that have, now I call it a luxury because obviously the ones that are home are the lucky ones that are not ill and all of that. And that's an important part of the process. But at least we are lucky enough to be able to do this with our kids and give them just a great food language to be able to take into their lives. And so my kids are, one is about to go to college next year, the other one is 15. They love Indian food. They're incredibly proud of their background because of the food. And that's what I was able to do for them. So I'm hoping, and I know that the kids are going to lead us to be even more inquisitive about cultures and food, because that's how they live and that's how they think. And I think that's absolutely beautiful.
And I love how food is also a representation of what's actually happening in the world. Like I said, I'm sure we grew up very similarly where, I wanted to hide almost everything that I did. And I just wanted to have mac and cheese and pizza. And I would tell my mom, I go, I don't want Chinese food anymore. I want this instead. And I appreciate that my parents we had a lot of Chinese food and I learned how to cook it, even though on the exterior I may have been trying to hide it. And now for my kids, it's not even an issue. They love all kinds of food. They go when their friends come over, hey, you want to try this? Let me explain it to you. So I do appreciate you talking about the future of our children, because I do see the shift. And I would love us to make that analogy of that it's not just through food, but we are evolving and we need to continue to teach the young people. They will bring us forward. And, my kids made this fabulous meal. And I don't know that I was okay in the kitchen, probably making things out of Bisquick boxes, but my kids have really evolved in terms of cooking and really taking initiative. So I think that's amazing that you are teaching more people, especially your children and the future youth, to really appreciate food and use it as a way to bring people together. Isabel, share a little bit about what you think that we can all do for the future.
Yeah, I think whether you're an adult or a child, when you're looking at food, the benefits of diversity and different cultures are so undeniable. It's a brilliant way for that first step in that conversation. And it's a first step in many conversations. And as I say, it's a really important first step in the conversations around poverty and inequality. And so getting people engaged in just the section of food poverty will hopefully get people engaged more widely on different social issues, inclusion, diversity. And I think we're definitely moving in the right direction.
I feel super hopeful. I'd like to hear about what you guys are working on right now and maybe ways that we can support you to really create this conversation around food, maybe some areas that I didn't get to or some initiatives that you're working on that you'd like to share. I'd just like to open it up and we can have a free-flowing conversation.
Well, I launched at the beginning. I have two things that I've been working on. I have a podcast called Every Meal Matter, or I have a podcast called Eating at a Meeting, and which each week I interview two different experts in food and beverage in all aspects, from chefs to doctors to eaters, to a variety of different experts. And then on Every Meal Matters is a new digital online course that I started to educate you on why food does matter, the conversation that we're having here, as well as moving into how do you create those inclusive food and beverage experiences from the get-go and all the way through execution. So if I would love to have all three of you online on the podcast to talk about, what does food and beverage mean and eating at a meeting. So
I love that. Thank you so much for the invitation. I think podcasting in terms of sharing your message is so important. On the Power of the Only, I'm really talking about onlys like you that are changing the conversation, right? You're doing it within the food industry, things that people haven't thought about, and planting that seed. So thank you for planting that seed and trying to evolve the conversation.
Thanks.
Yeah. What else is everyone working on?
So I'll jump in. I have an opportunity to create the first Indian food series on WTTW, which is our PBS affiliate here in Chicago. But Angela, as a creative, I'm not great at raising sponsorship dollars. That's my tough space. So I'm getting out there. I'm trying to ask for money. It's not easy, but I'm just asking for sponsors for the show. I've got the contract. We're ready to go as soon as this pandemic is done and we can travel again. And then the other thing that I'm working on is a new book, Indian Food in the Instant Pot. So if anyone's interested, pop on my website, Indian is Apple Pie, and I've got recipes already that I've been perfecting. They're coming out good. My husband's been eating the same dish for the last 4 weeks because I can perfect it. But that's okay. That's okay. He's better for it.
I love that you're doing it in the Instapot too. I had my Instapot years ago when the fad came out, and I had it in my cupboard for like a year and a half. And I was like, oh, it's too hard to use. I pulled it out. I'm like, why have I not been using this? My beans are ready in 30 minutes. I stew the beef. And so I can't wait to dive into your Indian recipes because I kind of create my own recipes. I know other Asian foods, but Indian, I kind of just throw in all the spices. And if it tastes like the flavors that I want, then we're on the right track. So I look forward to that. Isabel, what are some of the new initiatives that's happening or that we can really evolve?
I guess one exciting new initiative that we're working on is with a new app called Too Good To Go. I think they're coming to the US. They're doing a big expansion there, and we're using them to address our hot food waste. It's something that we can't redistribute to charity, unfortunately, but we're going to be selling it in magic bags. And as a consumer, you'll be able to purchase a surprise bag, and it'll be filled with various different products that would be wasted. And it's, I guess, a brilliant way to try new foods because you won't know what you're getting until you pick it up. But from a retailer perspective, it's a brilliant way to reduce waste. So I would encourage you all to download the app and try and find a magic bag in your area.
Oh my God, that is so fun. It's called Magic Bag?
Yeah.
I love that. Food and fun and surprise. Like everyone, we're at home, some people getting takeout, supporting restaurants. What a fun, innovative idea. See, this is what happens when people start thinking about need and mixing the fun and innovation. And that is exactly what we all need. It's been such a pleasure to speak to all of you and an honor. I love how we're bridging the gap and really seeing how it starts with the conversation of sharing food at the table and how it can be really a bonding experience, but also opening up that dialogue where we can really create diversity, not just in ethnicity and culture and different types of food, but also in terms of how you were saying in sustainability and food waste. So I thank you all for being here. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you have been watching how food can put diversity on everyone's table. Thank you for joining us and being part of this Non-Obvious Diversity Summit. If you'd like to check out more of the panels, go log on. There's so many innovative topics going on the topic of diversity. Make sure you check out nonobviousdiversity.com, and our official summit hashtag is #nonobviousdiversity. I'm Angela Chee. Here's to you and your voice, and always stay non-obvious. Bye.